sides, and I'm here really because I'd love to hear from you all, from our community. Um, Sorry if there's a little pause, I'm just letting people in. From our community around your thoughts about consolidation, mainly because I haven't heard many yet, other than the traditional U32 Montpelier-Roxbury. So I just wanted to make sure that I gave ample opportunity to talk to people. I will say this now, just in case I forget later, that if you want to talk longer in a smaller setting, then by all means get in touch with me so we can set up some times to talk of what works with both of our schedules. And if you you talk to people in the community and they have questions, then please encourage them to reach out to talk to me as well, because I think the better I am informed by people's opinions and things around this idea, the better I can represent our district and our community. And I want to make sure I do that well. So I'll start off just by sharing my screen with a super short presentation because I don't want to actually talk that long. I want to hear from you all. So as I'm talking, if you have questions, start writing them down, and then we'll do a typical just kind of hand raise kind of thing for any comments, concerns, questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. And I will tell you probably a lot that I'm not sure. I can certainly share my opinions on things though. So if I share my screen here, I'm a little nervous because then I will not be able to see who needs to come in, I don't think, but we'll make the best of it. Maybe I can. Okay. Oops. Not that. Okay. So the whole idea is, what are we thinking as a community about the idea of merger? And again, this is my chance to hear from you all and to talk to each other about the different ideas that are coming at us around consolidation. I just do have some norms for engagement tonight. Just be mindful of airtime. We now have around 20 people online, so we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to talk. I don't have anything else going on tonight, so if we need to go later than 7:30, I'm happy to stay on as well. Be open to multiple perspectives. That we're not making any decisions whatsoever. We're not in any kind of place to make any kind of decision, so this is just an opportunity to share opinions and thoughts and ask questions. Number 3, be okay to leave without concrete answers, because I certainly don't have them. So we are in a state of flux at the moment. And so right now it's just a listening opportunity for me. Ask any questions you might have, because I'm going to write them down, and Orca's here, so they're recording this for us, so I can come back to it as well. Our school board can come back to this. I see Lynn Turcott on, who's on our school board, but she could be just representing herself as a community member tonight as well. And so this is just really important for us who are in charge with representing us to make sure that we represent our community the best we can. And again, if you want to talk more, absolutely, let's set up a time to talk, 100%. So just a little background on what is now Act 73 that was signed into law in the last legislative session. The main goals that really influence us here. Number 1, the goal of 73 is to establish new and larger districts. Number 2 is to change the education funding model. Essentially, they want to flip it from how it goes now to the direct opposite, essentially, in the most simplest terms. It changes the eligibility criteria for which some independent schools can receive public tuition dollars. It has a couple policy changes in it. There's class size minimums. There's statewide graduation requirements that are not created yet, and not created statewide calendar, or school calendar. So that should be coming later. And then also decide how to establish a school construction fund, because a lot of this falls on its face if we don't have the schools that have the capacity for students. The essential thing here is that essentially the top 2 pieces, I'm not positive about the last 3, but the top 2, right now there's a redistricting task force who had their last meeting today, which I listened to all day today. They're charged with creating different maps, different options for the legislative branch to vote on, to decide on in the session that starts in January. If they can't do that, if the legislature can't decide on a district map, then the number 2 falls apart. It doesn't happen because number 2 is built on the idea that we have less districts. So there are many outs in this law that are created, and they were created on purpose by the legislature last year. So I just kind of thought about what kind of things we're looking for right now. Oh, I should say too that we'll make sure I'll have Anna post this. This Act 73 is a link to an AOE website that has more information on all of these if you want to go more in depth. But if you do go to the Agency of Education's website and just Google Act 73, you'll get the same information. That's just a link to the page. So tonight, we just want to focus on what questions do you have about Act 73 specifically? What are your thoughts about merging with other school districts? What are your biggest concerns? And what are the positives that could potentially come from a merger? So quick little PowerPoint, not much at all, stopping sharing now. And I will open up the floor to whomever would like to ask a question or provide comments. And I think the best way to do that is to raise your hand, use the raise hand feature, which you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then just come off mute and we can start there. Who's going to be the first brave soul?
Well, Libby, I can't find my hand, but this is
Okay.
Caitlin Brower, and I have a
You're fine.
question.
Thank you for
Um,
the first brave one.
sure. One of my I have a lot of questions, but I'll just give one,
Okay.
because it's kind of specific. Um, I feel like our district has really prioritized SEL, and expanding the SEL department, and we've done a great job of that. And I just wonder if a merge was to happen, what are like the ideas around different schools and districts policies about, like, if we have different ideas about something like an SEL team?
Yeah. So if I could answer that in a broader statement, because I know Caitlin, SEL is near and dear to your heart. Absolutely. As you're one of our great professionals in that area. I think that's a bigger question than you could put anything in for SEL, in that situation. So I think one of the first things, should we consolidate with anybody, would the superintendent's first job is that they would have to do a complete audit of all the systems and essentially look to see where everybody is and see where we need. Oh, thank you, Emily, for putting that in the chat. A jargon, like we live and dream these jargons. So anytime you hear jargon things, then please call me out on it. And Emily Seifert just put in the chat, SEL equals social emotional learning. Thank you, Emily. But anything, any system, any belief, any value, all of that would have to be audited by the leadership in the new district. And I would imagine that there would be a lot of consensus building and soul searching to find what the new district would be like. I don't think there's an exact answer to that, quite honestly. I think that's part of the piece of joining new districts that the legislative branch may not be thinking about right now. Or at least I didn't hear much discussion about that. We can put it that way. So Caitlin, I think that's one of the I don't knows.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Next question.
Here's my hand.
Hi, Tina.
Hi. So here's my question. Since the legislature specifically set up a committee with the sole purpose of determining the districts, why won't it do it?
Well, that's a Libby opinion question. So I want you to put this firmly in my opinion of why they might not do it. So
I'm counting on it. Okay.
okay, so take this for what it's worth. I think that the idea of consolidation has not gotten broad publicity when you don't live it like I do, and I know you do, Tina Muncy. And so even that word consolidation or redistricting, people may not really put together what that means yet. And when people do, because if it becomes more of a reality, I believe that there will be a lot of pressure to not change what we have currently, and it's a voting year. So people are up for vote in the legislative session because it's the end of the biennial. And so I think that politically it will take very courageous representatives and senators to go against the vast majority of their population. I'm making some assumptions there that communities will not necessarily want to consolidate in the way that the legislature votes for it.
Okay, I have to tell you, just as an FYI, I could not find anywhere listed where that committee was meeting except for the first meeting. So I wrote to all my representatives and asked them where. And they wrote back and said they didn't know. They'd check. And I haven't heard from anybody.
So I can tell you that I do know. Tina, I know
Oh,
that answer.
oh,
They
yay.
meet at the Waterbury complex.
Yeah, but when?
They met today. It's
Oh,
if you they're on the it's not in the legislature, it's in the Agency of Education. But if you Google Vermont Redistricting Task Force, it will take you to the page at the Agency of Education where all the meeting things are.
okay. I did
Yeah,
think it was interesting that none of my representatives knew it.
that is very interesting. But that's where you can find it. It's in the Agency of Education, not in the House or the Senate's
Thank you.
information. Yeah. Other questions? And I should say, Tina, they had their meeting today. They won't have another one for the next meeting is in a month. Other things we're thinking about, even concerns. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you. So I am new to all of this. Hey, everybody. Trying to follow this in the news. And so Libby, if it felt like the slide presentation went faster than I could keep up with the notes,
Sure.
and for me to record the questions that I might have as a Montpelier citizen and taxpayer. So I don't know where we go from here with that.
So maybe I should back up and say what consolidation could mean. Would that be helpful?
I see Liza like, yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. I mean, can I get the slide presentation? Is that possible?
Yeah.
And then I can also maybe ask questions or email you my questions.
Maybe
Yep,
Libby
100%.
maybe Libby could put it up while we keep asking questions.
That would
Yeah.
be wonderful.
My
Thank
only
you.
challenge is that I can't see you then. I can't see who's raising their hands and things like that.
But then we can just like
Sorry.
unmute and maybe.
There's not a whole lot on here. I'll tell you that. Oh, I got all kinds of ads on here now. Hold on. Somewhere ads came on. I don't know where that came from. Okay.
Libby, can you just link the slideshow in the chat?
Oh, that's
And
a
then
good
we can
idea.
look ourselves.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Who's that, Caitlin?
Yeah,
Yep. Hold on.
thanks.
No, I don't know what just happened, but my computer went fluky. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, thank you. I'm assuming that most of you are really like in depth, really up to date, and have a lot of information and opinion about this, but I don't. And so I'm here tonight to just get information. And so
I think one of the challenges, Nancy, is there's not a lot of information. So there's the law that happened, and the very first thing in the law is a task force that has 2 retired superintendents on it, a few legislature people and some other people on the task force, and their task is to um, create at least 3 different possibilities for new districts.
That much I know. Thank you. Um,
So when we say
but
consolidation, we mean consolidate districts.
yeah, no, I do know. I know that. Thank you. But during this slideshow, you made some comments during the bullets, but I won't take any more time up from the group. And I'll watch Orca.
Sounds good. Other questions, concerns? I'm curious what people think about a bigger district. Nancy Reed, was that a hand up, or was that I was swatting at a mosquito? Michelle, go ahead. Let's unmute you.
Oh, sorry. I
There
think
you go.
I didn't think I was going to speak up and then I changed my mind. So my mic wasn't like activated, but I'm working now.
Yeah, you're absolutely great. I'm glad you decided to chat. What's up? What are you
Um,
thinking about?
I'm just thinking about the number, like if we're consolidating and making these huge districts, essentially, is the idea that they're hoping to close down schools, particularly the small schools. And I saw that there was a minimum class size, but I was curious if they had a maximum class size, and would that potentially lead to those smaller schools closing down?
There is not a maximum class size. They only went with minimum. Those are great questions, Michelle. They only went with the minimum class size. And the House Education Committee actually came to superintendents quite a bit with the minimum class size, and we were allowed to give, that was like the one area we actually did give a lot of input that they took. They also looked at the MRPS policy when they were making some decisions. I think they're actually, the minimums are smaller than what we actually have in our policy, but we did influence that a bit. So there is not one legislator, so I can put that, who is saying the intent of this is to close small schools. There are legislators who are saying that it is important to them to keep elementary schools in local communities, and that they believe they could consolidate middle and high school levels in a different way. They are making a lot of assumptions about what consolidation will actually do. In fact, the merger committee or the redistricting committee talked a lot about this today in their meeting. There's been a lot of assumptions that consolidation and bigger means more efficient, less costly. And right now, that's an assumption they're making. They don't have modeling or evidence to really show that. In the law, they are shooting for districts the size of 4,000 students to 8,000 students. That's the range that was put in the law. And that is large to us here in Vermont. It is still very small across the country. Not that that makes anybody feel better, but that is a relative, number. There is some research that supports that size district. There's 1 or 2 studies as saying yes, that is an efficient size district. But you can also find studies that say it's not. So it's one of those things that they did put numbers into the districts for total student enrollment. And it was kind of scattershot how that came across. So there isn't a stated intent in the law to close small elementary schools. there isn't a stated intent to save them either. I think there's a desire because people are worried about reactions there. Michelle, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so, and that makes sense. I guess my other question would be, and this would kind of come down to those schools closing, like, would they put a limit on how far, particularly elementary school students, would be bused? That just sounds like, to find even a in Vermont, like, I totally get that 4,000 to 8,000 is low across the country, but
Yeah.
like geographically in Vermont, how big of a space does it require to
Yeah.
have that many students in one district?
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the major challenges that the redistricting committee is facing right now. That right there. Forget transportation size, just times, just geography alone to get to that number may very well be impossible. It may not be a possible thing to attain. So you've hit the nail on the head there. That is one of the complexities of this, is our geography.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, Catherine. If you're talking, Catherine, you're muted still.
Okay, sorry, I had to figure out.
Oh,
I'm on
that's
my
okay.
phone.
Don't worry about it. That's okay.
So I just have a few things. I wasn't sure I was going to talk either, but
I'm glad you
this is small.
decided to.
Um, One, maybe positive that could possibly come out of this. Is there any talk of like having specialized high schools, such as, focused on the arts or focused on math and science? Or we're not really there yet? I don't know.
There is no, there's no, I haven't heard a lot of talk about that. That's not to say that it hasn't been spoken about, Catherine. I haven't heard that a whole lot.
Mhm.
When people start talking about specialized schools, it can happen not being a charter schools, but
Mhm.
mainly we're talking about the charter movement there, and that's frowned upon in Vermont pretty heavily.
Mhm.
Although Burlington School District has some specialized schools, so it is done in
Mhm.
Vermont. But that has not been a conversation. I would imagine, however, going back to Caitlin's first question, that would be a decision that leadership and community might make if you have a brand new district with multiple schools. That could potentially be a path that district has taken, but it's not in the law in any way. I know I don't think it was part of the discussion.
Mhm. And, my concern would be the community that we've worked so hard to create within our districts and how much of a shakeup there would be. It's kind of just a comment, not necessarily a
No, that's
question.
great. Yeah.
And then just, how does our system feel about, are we going to talk merger ahead of all of this? Or are we just going to sit back and wait and see what happens?
Yeah, that's a great question, Catherine. So when before the law was voted on, the Washington Central board chair and Montpelier-Roxbury board chair and myself and Stephen Dellinger Pate, who's the superintendent over in Washington Central, did meet to say, hey, let's just get some information together around a potential merger. So we do have a feasibility study. The board was briefed on the study last board meeting, 2 board meetings ago. And you can find that feasibility study on the board's website. If you need me to just send it to you, just send me an email and I'll certainly send it to you. But it is up on the board's website from when was that, Lynn? The August meeting, the last August meeting. So if you go to the meeting notes then. So the boards have gotten a preliminary feasibility study. That is a completely objective study. There's no subjectivity in it. So here's the amount of students, Here's the amount of students that's projected for the next 10 years. Here's the tax rates. Here are the offerings in each building. Here are the numbers of buildings. Here's what the current capacity of each building is. It's all just objective data. Just to have that conversation. It is not, sorry, I'm just admitting to people. It is not any kind, if you're looking to say like, would this be a good decision for either district? That's not what the report was for. It was just to get objective data. As far as merging prior to decisions that the legislature might make, I'm not sure if that is worth our while right now. I think that we need to keep talking and keep ideas open, but it's not worth, I don't believe, and I don't want to speak for my school board or Washington Central School Board or anybody else's school board, but I don't believe that would be in our best interest to do until the legislature figures out what they want to do. It could be double work. But it's good to have that information, the objective data that we can pull from if we need to. So we have that now. Chris Parker, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm wondering, similar to a possible statewide school calendar, is there any discussion about statewide contracts, union contracts for teachers or IAs or custodial staff? Or would that be more big district by big district? And has that come up at all yet?
It did come up very early, Chris, in the conversation. And my opinion is that once they started unraveling the onion layers, they quickly dropped that because it's so complicated. And I don't believe that that is an area that is truly understood by our legislators, and how different contracts are and how new negotiations would go. They did not talk about that at length at all. It was brought up numerous times by superintendents because we're in the know, right? I do know that the redistricting task force, that has come up in the redistricting task force a bit, mainly by Jen Botzigerns and Jay Badams, who are the retired superintendents on there. And I think it's on the back of people's minds, legislators' minds, but it's not something that they want to tackle. So a statewide contract, no, that is not something they're willing to tackle. It would be up to the new districts to develop the new contracts of whatever the new districts might be, would develop the contracts.
Okay, thanks. So then there would be some work, obviously, for the new combined districts to look at what everybody's current contracts are and see what's similar, what's different, and how do we compromise with all of those things.
How do we get there? Yeah. I was just talking to our colleague Eli Rosenberg yesterday, and he was asking a similar question. And one of the things that is my opinion is that if we have completely new districts, because we're not talking about folding one district into another, we're talking about a brand new business entity, right? So if we're talking about a brand new business entity, that superintendent and business manager at least would need to be hired, I don't know, a year in advance, because of this, like, we'd have to have a new teacher contract or some sort of agreement in place on July 1st, because that's when fiscal years turn over. So that is part of the timeline, quite honestly, Chris, that if this happens, worries me the most. Just honestly, that's what worries me the most.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it is definitely complicated. Thank you.
Other questions, concerns, positive ideas with merger, concerns? Liza, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Libby. I
Yep.
mean, like Nancy said, I just feel like I just don't have very much information to be able to form much of an opinion at this point. So mainly wanted to come here and listen, but speaking from my husband and I lived out in Marshfield for the first 8 years of being homeowners. And then when our oldest was going to start ninth grade, we just felt like Twinfield was too small. Like I think 2 years ago, Twinfield's graduating class was like 8 students. And this is a time when you want them to have access to explore all their interests, right? And so I think there's a lot of widespread agreement that for high school, they can like handle the longer bus ride and you want more sports opportunities and classes. And yeah, definitely for the littler kids to not bus as far. Maybe you can creatively like combine grades 1 and 2 if it's a small school or whatever. But I would love to know your thoughts on, it sounds like studies show both sides of the coin, that these bigger districts of 4,000 to 8,000 can save money, or maybe in some cases they can cost more. Like I can see if you have a teacher at Twinfield who's teaching classes of 5 kids all day, like that's a pretty inefficient use of a teacher who's trained to teach like 20 kids at a time. But could you speak to some of the things that are like seen as the big cost savings? I guess maybe administrative. I don't know. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yep, and keep in mind, Liza, that most of what I'll say are assumptions because you don't know unless you model, right? So one of the major assumptions that's being made is that right there, what you just said at the end, that if you merge and consolidate into a bigger district, you will have less administrative overhead, which may or may not be accurate. There won't be 56 superintendents, right? I think we have 56 now. I could be off on 1 or 2 on that number, but there wouldn't be 56 superintendents. However, you'd need a superintendent and an assistant superintendent and a curriculum director for 7-12 and a curriculum director for pre-K 6, or, however they put it. You need more administrators with more work, right? That needs to be done, or more people to service. So I'm not positive, while that may save a little bit of money, it won't save the type of money that the state is trying to save, right? So if we're talking about the entire education fund, which is large, if you fired every superintendent in the state and didn't have any more superintendents whatsoever, you'd be saving about $10 million. And what they're looking to save is about $300 million. So it's a lot, and then who does the work, right? So yes, there probably would be a bit of savings in administrative costs. I don't think it's as large as they believe it would be, because you'd need a different central office structure to service that many people. There would most likely, if you closed schools, and that's a big if, there would be a savings in staffing and faculty and staff. So if you were to close schools, you wouldn't need as many teachers. So that would be a savings, but that only is if you close schools. And that's not a popular move, as we well know in Montpelier-Roxbury. So that would potentially be a savings. There could be some efficiencies of scale, so the fact that Washington Central's buses literally drive through Montpelier every single morning, like there could be some efficiencies there for transportation that we just don't realize right now. There could be some efficiencies around services for students. There could be lots of efficiencies that could save some money. And all of those are assumptions right now. Nobody has modeled out what it could look like with real-time dollars of fiscal year 26, which is what we're in right now. The limited modeling that was done based on the initial 5 district plan was modeling based off of 2 years ago tax rates. So it wasn't real-time money, like it wasn't accurate. And it wasn't a model that when superintendents and people in the field looked at what they were modeling off of, they weren't based on Vermont standards at all. So there were some real problems and with real challenges with the modeling that was done. So we're making a lot of assumptions that bigger districts equals less money. That simply, we just don't know. There's no judgment there. We simply just don't know.
Yeah, thanks, Libby. And then I want to let someone else go if they have hands up, but at some point I'd love to hear. No, I don't know numbers of local districts. So what are some examples that would get us in the 4,000 to 8,000 range? But again, I've had your time, so if someone else has another question.
That's a really quick one, and I'm sure other people have that question too.
Okay.
And if you can hear that noise, that's just a truck back down the street. If you can hear that noise, so if we merged with Washington Central, Montpelier-Roxbury, and Washington Central, we would not be at 4,000 students. We'd be about 3,500. And Washington Central's, as we know from the feasibility studies, their enrollment is dropping pretty precipitously right now. So we would be below that. We would have to go find more dancing partners to get to, or they'd have to give us more dancing partners to get to 4,000. So we'd be looking at potentially, it depends on what they come up with, quite honestly. I don't even want to pontificate, like but that Washington Central would be our most likely dancing partner, and we would not be at 4,000 yet. Okay, so we've got, let's see here. Looks like Caitlin, you're next in the queue.
Okay, I figured out my raise hand.
Good.
2 questions quickly. I guess I'm confused about the timeline because this sounds like such a huge undertaking. So it feels like it would take a long time. So I'm just wondering if they are talking about what their goal is for time. And then also, I'm trying really hard to find the positives. And I'm wondering about, like, with you and your colleagues, like when you talk, is there some positives that you're talking about?
Yeah. So in the law, the timeline that's stated, so I would say their very overly hopeful goal would be that if they could agree on new district maps, that those districts would start 2028, 2029 school year. I think that's entirely hopeful. So I'm not sure if that would actually happen, but that's what's in the law. And then your next question was like, what are the positives that we can see? I can see if we had bigger high schools, I do believe that we could probably offer more academic classes to our students. I do think we could offer more world languages. We could offer more travel opportunities. I think we could offer more things to our older students. I do think that. I also think that I do think larger elementary schools, we could offer some more clubs and things that would be cool for kids too. I don't see as many opportunities with our younger students as I can see with our older students, but it really falls down into you could offer more pieces, So I know Washington Central offers some AP classes that have 4 kids in them. 3 kids in them. You can't really have great in-depth you can, but conversation gets a lot different when you have a lot of diversity of thought, right? So I think that we could offer some different things for our older kids.
Okay, thank you.
Matt B, which when you jumped on Matt B, I thought you were my brother because that's his name too. So go ahead.
That's actually Olga Benoit.
Okay, you are definitely not my brother. So go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Yay. I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
One, you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation when you were doing the slides that they're looking to flip the funding model. I don't know if you know more about it. What does that mean, flipping the funding model? And the second question, without the evidence that we're going to be saving money, what's the point of the law?
So thank you for asking that question, the first question. So right now, at its most basic, most basic, because our education finance, we like to say Vermont is unique. And I say, Vermont's not that unique. Actually, in education finance, we are very unique. We're the only state that really does this. The way our finance works right now is that myself and my leadership team come up with our budget. 80% of it is salaries and benefits. So we don't have a lot of discretionary decisions to be made, especially when you throw in facilities needs. We bring it to our school board. Our school board massages it, gets community feedback. We change it based on what the school board wants. The school board says, finally, yes, this is the budget we're going with. It goes out to you voters, or all of us, I should say, because I vote as well. And if you all say, yes, we agree that this is the budget the school district should have, then we automatically get that money. So you will be taxed that amount. It goes into an education fund, like all of the tax dollars go into an education fund, then we will get what we asked out of that education fund. When I say flip it, what that means is that the legislators will decide how much money we get, and we need to make our budget within that parameter. So they still would be like, we still have weighted students. So students who are multilingual learners, they have a higher weight than a kid who's not, like there still would be weighted students and things like that. So based on your student population, the state would say to me, Libby, this is the amount of money that your district gets. Figure out your budget. You get no more.
Special education students will have a higher weight?
They're trying to decide that right now. Yeah,
Okay.
they have not decided that. Right now, students with special needs, we get a grant, essentially. It's a block grant based on our numbers. And they're trying to decide if they switch that to a weight per student or if they continue with how it's funded now. So that's still up in the air a little bit. And then remind me what your other, why are they
What's
doing
the
this if we
point?
don't know? This is my opinion, so keep that in mind. Like we're firmly in my opinion mode. I think that the assumptions around efficiencies and costs are playing a very large hand in people's opinions who make the decision. There's the assumption that the bigger districts will create economies of scale that will save money. And we just simply don't have the modeling to show that yet. They could be correct. I don't know. They could be correct. But that is what the assumption is.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much, Libby.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Emily, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, great. So related to why are we doing this and the costs, it seems like one of the main arguments against the law, or not, maybe not the law, but just against this whole, where it ended up is that it doesn't address the rising healthcare costs, and that's a huge driver of our tax rates, because as you said, our salaries and benefits are 80% of the budget. So is there now any conversation that's happening that you're aware of?
No, not that I'm aware of, not in the education circles. If it's happening at all, it's happening elsewhere. That is actually one thing that the superintendent stated repeatedly last year, that if you want to address cost, you have to address the actual cost drivers we know. The governor is on paper saying we can only tackle one thing at a time, and we chose not to tackle that. So that is a serious concern. We have no control over it whatsoever. My business manager last year figured out that if we hire a brand new teacher, or in their first 2 or 3 years, and they have a family of 4, we're paying more for their health care than we are for their salary at this point in time. So it's significant. It's a significant cost. But no, that has not been discussed as part of this law. And if they're talking about it, they're not making that public.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd ask in case
Yeah,
you'd heard
no.
anything new.
It's a fantastic
people
question.
coming to their senses.
Yep.
My other question is less specific. It's more just wondering about, and I don't ask this with any strong opinion for or against consolidation, but I just wonder, if we have these huge districts, does that lead to potentially less flexibility within schools in dealing with kids who are struggling in a typical school setting for various reasons? Do you think that, I'm just curious. Again, this is really mostly, I'm curious about your opinion. Like, my sense is that maybe right now in different schools can each be pretty different in their approaches to meeting kids where they are, who might be having trouble attending school or who have difficulty with the school environment and need an alternative learning situation. Do you think that the flexibility that there is might go away if we just have these mega districts where I guess I'm kind of mentally equating big districts with more conformity, less flexibility. But do you think that's, I'm just curious.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think you could, within the district, I think you could it's how you create your systems, right? Which the legislature is not going to control really. So I think you could have potentially more flexibility, particularly if you have school buildings that aren't full. You could have some more flexibility there, with an appropriate system in place. And that costs money, right? So that that flexibility costs money. So I don't think that would necessarily be a cost saver, or it could though. It could, depending, because we just don't know. I think that if we're talking about a student who really is struggling and the typical school really is hard, Vermont does not have enough services for children and families who are truly struggling. So that's another cost driver that has not been addressed and will not be addressed by this law, around what kind of wraparound services can we provide to children and family who are really in crisis, and we have many of them. And so right now it's a lot the responsibility of the school district. And we don't have enough therapeutic environments for students who need that type of environment. So that's another piece that's not being, it's kind of like healthcare. I mean, you're hitting the two major ones that every superintendent will tell you is mental health wraparound services for students and families, and the healthcare. Those are two significant drivers. As Caitlin said in the very beginning, we've put a lot of money and human resources into social emotional learning in our district because it's a value and it's a necessity now. So it's a cost driver, most definitely. I don't know. I think my hunch would be that we'd have slightly more flexibility and it wouldn't be cheaper. That would be my hunch.
Thanks.
Yeah. Samantha Jackson, go ahead. Or wait, Lindsay, you're up next. Sorry, Samantha. I'm looking at my queue here.
Thanks. My question was, when you were talking about modeling, like financial modeling, and I've been hearing about that, do you know is there a plan for creating, financial economic models before there are decisions made?
I hope so.
Okay.
I don't know I don't know for sure. I truly hope there is, but I don't know for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. Samantha, now you're up.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have headphones in, so I'm really loud in my head.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, good. I'm kind of going off what Caitlin said as well, like I don't really see many positives in this at all. I've taught for a long time and I've spent most of my career before moving to Vermont in really, really large districts. I taught for a long time in an elementary school that had almost 1,000 students, 10
That is a
kindergarten
big
classes
school.
1 year. Yeah. My last school had about 600 students. We had about 120 in fifth grade, I want to say. And so we literally looked across the country and chose Vermont. And then we're really, really fortunate to end up in Montpelier, where we chose to buy a house. And I just want to say, having had the experience in these districts that are kind of slated for Vermont, that I really want people to know that I'm going to speak as a parent. I'm also a teacher here in Vermont, not in Montpelier. So I'm going to speak as a parent right now,
You're
with
good. You
children
can speak
in.
as either. It's fine.
My union said to speak as a parent.
Got it. All right.
No, it's all right. It's all right. But I just want people to know what an exceptional gem we have in Montpelier schools. It is, and I know there are people who would disagree with me, and every system has its flaws. But both of my children, and they're very different from one another, are they love school. They love their schools. They're loyal to their schools. They're what I would consider thriving, in their own different ways. And I think it's so much about scale and relationship and community identity. Everything from the Montpelier School's logo to the teachers knowing all the kids and the programming at the schools, and I'm thinking of the amazing programming, at the high school with, the farm and the food and harvest festival and things I don't know if a lot of the community knows about. And so I don't necessarily have a question, but my concern is that community identity, my children's identity that they're developing, now they're in middle school, they think they're going to go to Montpelier High School, but it's really up in the air, and it's stressful. And I'm worried that when they're in high school, there's going to be this giant statewide upheaval, that's going to really disrupt their education. And it dawned on me the other day that both of them started their education during COVID, which was completely disrupted this huge upheaval. And so I don't know. I guess I'm just putting out there my opinion about how I feel about our schools and our school system, and my concern about my own kids' education.
So Samantha, when we put together an advertisement for our schools, I'm going to have my communications coordinator call you first. I love
Or
hearing
my kids.
that. Yeah, I know, the kids. I love hearing that about your experience in our school. And you're right, everybody does have their flaws, and we try really hard to do what you just said. So thank you for saying those nice thoughts about our system. I appreciate it. And I think you're right. As I said to Chris earlier, I was talking to one of our teachers, Eli, yesterday, who came in to talk to me about this. And MRPS is a place that I love so much. And so as this is one of the reasons why I wanted to hear from the community about how you're feeling, the good and the bad, around this idea, because it's my job to speak in places of power for around, these kind of ideas. And I want to make sure that I represent us as best as possible. And I think the community identity that we do have at MRPS is so strong. When I see Jason Gingold out on the soccer field screaming his head off for "Go Solons," and Julie dressed up as an alligator all the time, or at least one of our teachers dressed up as an alligator, but Julie wearing all kinds of gator gear. Like it's just, that's what we do. So we kind of live and breathe our schools in Montpelier-Roxbury, and that's important. It's important to maintain. So I think I say that just because I know I will be doing everything for us. Our district is my first priority. Tina, did you just come off mute to say something?
I did.
Go ahead.
And I'm swatting flies because we're outside. But I wanted to say two things. I appreciate the fact that I taught at Main Street Middle School in the dark ages, but the smallest class, sixth grade class I taught in had 110 kids.
Yep.
So that's where we were.
Mhm.
And this, the downturn in the number of kids is not only in other places all over the state, but it's here too. And one of the things I'm worried about, Libby, is that our teachers would not be used to teaching what the rest of the country teaches for a class size, 25 at least, would be interesting for some of our teachers. Likewise, superintendents are not used to having a district with 4,000 people in it or something. So I'm interested in if the state has thought about how we'd make that change and make it good for people.
I can say that Main Street Middle School classes are around 25. So almost everywhere.
Okay, that's
We can, if you're a middle school kid, we can't fit you. I'm sorry, we have
right.
no more
That's
room.
true.
We are packed to the gills at Main Street Middle School. So our class sizes are pretty on par in that building.
But that wouldn't be the
Definitely.
same when you think about people we're talking about high schools. And when you talk about, Liza was talking about where her kids were and the size of the high school,
Yeah.
High schools like Cabot, who have hardly any
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. We are, I'd say, right size for our building sizes, if that makes sense. So here's the other challenge that you didn't ask, Tina, but one of the other challenges to this, I think about Harwood, and I'm very good friends with the Harwood superintendent, Mike, and he says, Libby, I could easily consolidate schools. It makes sense for me to consolidate schools, except my school, if I bring kids from this school to kids to this school, and I don't know the districts well enough to say which schools they are. So like if I take Facein and bring them to Duxbury, I don't know if that even makes sense, but the school I'd be moving them to doesn't have enough room. I have to add on to that school in order to fit the other kids coming in. I can't fit them all. And so that's part of this challenge, is that you can consolidate in some areas and in some districts to right size them, except their buildings don't fit that number of students. And I hear the most from Harwood, but I think that's not that's pretty common across the
Yeah, but
state.
then there are places like Worcester or
Yeah.
other places that have lots of rooms in their
Yeah.
school building.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. Who could be folded into another school building easily. Yeah, you're right. So we have both of those situations, right? Which is
Tricky.
why school construction is given a tertiary nod in the law. Like we have to figure that out, because you do have to figure that out. If you're consolidating schools, you have to figure out school construction, because our buildings are archaic compared to the rest of the country.
That is
Absolutely archaic. And my Sherry Souza down in the Killington area, who's the superintendent down in the Killington area, isn't worried about space. She's worried about being able to heat her buildings, because her heaters are so,
old.
old that it's literally being held together by paper clips right now. Or, gas leaks or sewage leaks. Like those are the things people are worried about with their school buildings. They're not worried about ultra modern learning spaces. They're worrying about like basic sanitary conditions in some of our school buildings across the state. So there's that piece as well. It's 7:30 and I want to value people's time. I will stay on as long as you like. My email, put it in the chat so everybody has it. If you don't, is that libbyb@mpsvt.org. If you have other questions, concerns, didn't want to come on Zoom or didn't want to unmute yourself, no worries. You're welcome to write to me. You're welcome to set up a time with me. We can have a phone conversation, a Google Meet. We can meet for coffee, any of those things. I do truly want to continue the conversation with the community. I think this is just the start. I think we will be having lots more community conversations around this idea in the coming year or so. And thank you so much for taking an hour of this beautiful evening to spend with me about this. But I'll stay on if you want to chat more. If not, thank you very much for joining me, and we will talk soon.
Yes, thank you so much. I really am glad to see so much community interest and participation. The more we get, the better off we are in knowing what the desires of the community are. So
Most
thank
definitely.
you.
And Lenny, thank you for coming, the lone board member.
Somebody else will show up next time.
There you go. You did your job.
But I missed my grandson's only one of his few home soccer games for this, you guys.
Oh no, Lynn, come on. That's dedication. Nicole, do you want to add something on? Go ahead.
Well, Libby, thank you so much for holding this forum. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan generally, and I'm sorry that I'm late to the discussion, and I
No, that's
appreciate
okay.
you staying on the call a little bit later. Um, I'm a parent of a middle schooler in the district. I have worked at Spalding. I have worked at Harwood. That's where I did my student teaching. I've been at U32 since 2010. Um, I've lived in Montpelier for 20 years. I love these communities. I am deeply concerned about exactly what you brought up. It goes beyond programming and it goes to basic infrastructure and sustainability. And I am concerned, honestly, about programming and what opportunities we are able to offer students. And I do see in my school, in my department specifically, um, an inability to offer as many electives as we were 15 years ago. And that's really impacting students. And then when I think about the infrastructure stuff, when I think about the flooding risk, when I think about the heroic efforts that MRPS took in 2023 to make sure that students could return to MHS in time, and like kind of the weirdly lucky timing of it, I'm sure it didn't feel lucky at the time, but like it didn't happen during the school year, and
Yeah.
we don't have any guarantee it's not going to happen in the school year. And I think we need to be realistic. And I see so many commonalities among our MRPS. You know, I hear the pride we take in our community here, but I also see a lot of commonalities with neighboring communities. And I am fully in support of exploring like what it could look like to combine resources to have a more sustainable future. And you know, I see it as a parent and as a community member. I see it as a teacher, and I just wanted to have that vantage point out there. I love Montpelier. I love our kids, and I want to do what's best for them. And I really do think exploring options realistically of seeing how we can combine resources, I think would be a very responsible and forward thinking idea.
Yeah, and I think that, thank you, Nicole, for your thoughts. I think that's what, when we first got together, you know, as a foursome with Jim Floor, myself, and Steven, that was where we were coming from. Like, let's get all the information out here so we can see where are the opportunities there. Most definitely. So that conversation is certainly not done yet. We're meeting again next week. So we're still keeping that door open. I think we want to see what the legislature is going to do too. Does that make sense to us? But yes, I think there are a lot of commonalities between the districts that we can seize upon. Most definitely. What do you teach? I'm curious.
I teach social studies in the high school.
Got it.
Yeah, and I just see like what Jody Emerson is trying to do, like trying to get like, you know, as difficult and challenging as it is to try to get a whole new campus started. Like, I really appreciate the sort of forward thinking of that, and you know, whether or not it ends up happening, you know, like I do appreciate the thinking long term about the various possibilities of what we can provide for our kids in the future.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you again for hosting this. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks. Rebecca. I haven't seen you in so
Can you
long.
hear,
How you
can you hear me?
doing? Yeah, I can
Hi,
hear
good.
you.
I'm driving with my young student driver over here.
Oh
And
boy,
we've
do
been,
not slam on the brakes.
so we have been kind of cheering along, and Lucy keeps yelling out things that she wants me to say. So I just
Lucy, why don't you just come to
want
my
to,
office and you can tell me? Go ahead.
she's like, I will not speak. But I so want to thank Nicole for what she said, because Lucy, this is great. Because it's something that we're kind of cheering about, is we don't have enough AP classes, or there's so many classes that we would love to see that there aren't enough students, or there'd just be so many more resources if we were able to combine schools. And after the flood, it was a huge awakening experience, like of realization of that the high school is not situated in a great place, and our high school could tuck completely into U32 and still have room. And so I just feel like it's a valid conversation that we should be having. So
It
thank
is
you,
a valid
and I really
conversation.
appreciate. And I really want to say we adore you, and we
Oh,
would
thank
like,
you for
if we
saying
do
that.
that, we want to be able to choose our superintendent and take you with us.
I don't know if I want to be a superintendent in that big district, but thank you. Thank you. And Lucy, be careful.
Just second what other folks are saying here.
Yeah.
Like, I think we spend a lot of time in middle school and in early high school trying to make kids feel like a part of a community, having a TA work with them for all 4 years, so on and so forth. And then kids don't have classes to take their junior or senior year, and they go for a half day, or they go for 1 or 2 classes a day, or they peel off to the career center or early college or any number of other things. And it just seems like a school of a big enough size to offer classes to keep students in school all day, and have that as a baseline expectation that you're 16 and school is what you do. You don't just do school for 2 or 3 hours. You just attend school for 7 hours. I think it would be a huge boon to a lot of kids. And I think we talk about absenteeism as a district and so on. And I think that setting the example that in every grade we expect kids to attend school for a full day is a huge part of addressing absenteeism.
Yeah, the only thing I'd push back on there is that that would be like a rulemaking or a procedure, right? And that doesn't necessarily depend on the size of the school, because that's kind of like I don't know how else to describe. I mean, I have a senior, right? I have a senior at school, and he's at a big school in Chittenden County, one of our bigger schools, and he doesn't have a full day. Like so I think like the size doesn't necessarily influence that. That's like that would be more of a rule or procedure that I hear you. I wrote that down. I hear you in let's have kids stay at school all day. Most definitely.
Yeah. And I think it's both. I think you can make that rule or procedural change more realistically when you're offering a robust slate of classes. Like, I went to a very small school where that was the norm, and I took things like wood shop and computer aided drafting, and I loved them. But like, it will be very hard to convince a college bound kid in 2025 to take electives that they might not see as academically quite where they're at.
Yeah.
Like that.
Although you should see what our wood making students are making. It's amazing. I want to take that course.
But
yeah, thank you. Thanks for staying on too. I appreciate you. Samantha.
Thank you so much, Libby. I actually do have a question now,
Sure.
and then I'll let you go. I work in Washington Central as well. I work at Calais, and so I kind of hear things, from all over the place.
I bet you do.
And
Yeah.
and one thing that I keep hearing, and I'd love clarification on it, is that if we moved our high school, because I think sometimes the narrative is, oh, we could just move our high schoolers up to U32. But
Yeah.
then I hear, in Washington Central, well, we can't fit the middle schoolers and both high schools,
You can't.
which creates the issue of then moving the U32 middle schoolers out to accommodate our high schoolers, which then creates the issue of where are they going to go, which then
you are just starting to unravel the onion that people do believe that merger would be very simple because of what you said. Move Montpelier High School students to U32, and you are correct. We can't fit with U32 7 through 12 and our 9 through 12. So the 7/8s would have to go somewhere else. So the logical place, and this is just all hypothetical. So I want everybody see hypothetical in big capital letters, right? So if you move 7th and 8th from U32 over to Main Street Middle School, we are packed to the gills at Main Street Middle School. We can't fit those kids. So we would have to move our 5, 6 out somewhere. They'd have to go somewhere else. And we would most even 7, 8 would be probably pretty tight. We could do 6, 7, 8 maybe at Main Street, or we move them to Montpelier High School, but that's in a floodplain. Because we'd also need a different central office setup than either district has. So maybe central office moves to one of those buildings. And then we don't have room at Union Elementary School for that entire 5th grade. So we would it's a snowball. You're 100% correct. That merger, while seemingly simple because of our location and our common beliefs and our communities and all the things, is not so simple. That students most likely would be moving schools across the board, in both districts, not just Montpelier, but in both districts. Students would be going to a different school. Some students would be going to a different school. So yeah, it's not as simple as it looks off, just off the cuff. 100%.
Thank you. That clears it up for me.
Yeah, great. It's
it starts it for me.
Yeah, you are correct in understanding that. Lynn, you want to add to that in any way?
No, I think for me, one of the complicated things is that, in terms of joining school districts, is there's so much disparity between districts in general and offerings, depending on how they group the new school districts together, supervisor unions together. I think it's I think there's potential, and I think it's a complicated process.
It's most definitely a complicated process that no truer words have ever been said. Yes. So if there are no, I'm looking at who else is on. Any other questions for me, or comments, or concerns, celebrations? Thank you all. If you're still on, thank you so much for hanging out an extra 15 minutes, and I'll be doing more of these, I think, so we can, as more information comes out, and I'll be sure to make sure that I update the community as much as possible in my district newsletters. So thank you so much for joining, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody.